If you've ever found it difficult to accept the reality over how you feel about it, we're going to definitely get into that today because it's holding you back. It's preventing you from seeing opportunities, and you're clinging on to hope instead of the reality. Let's chat about it. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and oh my goodness, it's like almost Christmassy time, and here we are. So I'm really excited. We've had a great fall here in the Northeast. I hope that you guys have had some decent weather where you are, and this is a great topic. Okay, it's a great topic going into the holidays. We're getting ready to go into the new year. You know, it's that whole new year, new me, and I'm gonna pump your brakes on that here in the next couple of weeks. We don't go into unnecessary, overwhelming desires and goals for the New Year's. But until then, we are going to walk through the reality. So it's the concept of feel versus real, right? We respond so much out of feeling. I feel this way. I want this thing. And it's just because you want it doesn't mean it's good for you. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that it's not the reality. So over on Patreon, there is going to be a really good worksheet that's going to help you unbox where your pain points are, what the issue is, and the fact that regardless if you accept it or not, things are, right? So you can hate it, you can dislike it, you can want it to be different, but the facts of the matter is radical acceptance is going to come into play here. So a few podcasts that you can go back for reference, because I'm going to talk a little bit about them on here, but that's unnecessary because I have podcasts out there for you. And you're going to want to listen to the one on cognitive bias, the one on radical acceptance for sure. That one should just be on repeat. And also cognitive dissonance. So we're going to talk a little bit about those things because a lot of that lines in, and there's actually science behind it. It isn't just like, hey, this is not a great idea. It's tough, right? Like really think about your life right now, just currently, right now in this moment in time. Is there something that you're struggling to accept? It just is. Are you struggling with something to accept based upon what your feelings are stated in? Okay, so let me give you an example of that. You're in a relationship with your sister, okay, your sibling. You would love to have a sibling relationship, whatever that means to you. You really want to have this relationship. You want to, because you unfortunately think that everything on social media is what you need. So you're looking at all these people, they're hanging out with their siblings. It's like, whoa, look at my family, all of those things. So now you're looking at it from a comparison level. So you say, God, I just want my sister and I just want that relationship. Valid. But the reality is perhaps you're never going to get it. So regardless of you accepting it or not, and I'm telling you, I get this question all the time. Well, how do you accept? There's no magic pill. You accept because it is going to be what it is. That's why the Radical Acceptance podcast, things are going to be. Maybe that relationship with your sister is never going to be good. Maybe that means you need to distance. Maybe she needs to distance from you. Remember, there's two sides to everything. Perhaps you're not going to be the person that she needs in her life. And you can dislike it. You can yearn for it. Because remember, you don't really mourn the person. You mourn the idea of the person. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So there is a biological design. So we're going to go a little sciencey here first. There is a biological design on how your brain works. You've heard me talk about it in previous podcasts. You'll probably hear me talk about it frequently because there's only so much that I can tell you about your brain that is. So there is a wired part of your brain that is designed for hope. Okay, hope. You're going to think positive. You're going to remain optimistic, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. Now, this does help in sometimes. So let's say you're in a bad space. You're in a depressional state. You are just really having a not so great day. Yes, you're going to look forward. You're going to focus forward. You're going to stay in a positive mindset. You're going to know and you're going to hope that tomorrow is going to be better. Later on today is going to be better. Yes, that's great. I love that part of your brain. Often people are wired in a negative. I'm sorry, they're not wired in a negative. Your habit becomes negative. And that is another one of those mini podcasts I talk about. Your brain gets so used to a habit. Oh, it was under habits. Your brain is used to a habit So it becomes second nature. So most people are wired these days based upon, not wired, but kind of have wired themselves to this place of, let me prepare for negative. Let me prepare for negative. So when you can swing that in an optimistic level, that is amazing. We love that. However, there's always a yin to the yang. However, while that is great that way, it becomes extremely problematic when it comes to relationships and situations, and it makes us to cling. It makes us cling to the desires of the outcome, even if it's unrealistic. So I kind of want you to hear that last part, and I want you to equate that right now to something in your life. There's something in your life that this is where you're struggling with. It makes us cling to the desired outcomes, even if it's unrealistic. So go back to the sister scenario. Oh, me and my sister, I don't understand. We have those good days. We have those bad days. I really just want to have times with my sister. Okay. I would never tell you that I never use never and always, except for in very rare occasions. I would never tell you that this person would never change. That's unrealistic. That's not the problem. The problem is you're holding out hope for the change based upon a desired outcome versus the reality of what it is. So you're going on feeling versus reality. So let's take that up a notch. Let's say it is I'm going to give you a few examples. Let's say it's your mom. And you're like, my God, can you just one time tell me why? Why is it just always negative? Can you just one time say, good job, and leave it at that? Now you're beating yourself up in your head on a regular basis because you are sitting there and you are holding out hope. Great in some points, not here. This does not apply here. And you're holding out hope for her to see it, for her to be that person, for her to understand you, all of those things. Here's the reality. Could a person change? Of course, not because you want them to. You never want to do that. You never change for somebody. You, however, have to accept that some people are just going to think it's everybody else. It's everybody else. You owe me something. That is just how some people in life work. You have options here. You can keep getting frustrated. By the way, family doesn't get a free pass. So you can keep getting frustrated. You can keep getting aggravated. And at that point, that is not about your mother. That is about you. It isn't just your mom being a nightmare. You know what you're dealing with. So if you keep walking into the circus tent and you get mad that clowns are there, but you've been in the circus tent 15 times before and the clowns have always been there, it's not the clown's problem. That's yours. So just because you refuse to accept that perhaps this is the relationship, if any, that you're going to have with your mom, regardless if you accept that or not, it doesn't change the fact. So you're going off of feeling versus reality. Now let's give you another example. You're in a relationship. It's your partner. First of all, everybody isn't going to be the person that you want them to be. Nobody checks everybody's boxes. That's why you have a non-negotiable versus a negotiable. And your non-negotiables should be shorter than your negotiable section, because that's just, if not, you're going to never find anybody. But let's say you're in a relationship and you find that, you know what, we're really drifting apart. No, even if it's, we can get dramatic and say cheating and all that stuff. I mean, that's more of a kind of a easier black and white, just to where nobody's cheating, everybody's there. You don't hate the person, you don't disagree or even not get along with the person, but you're at that point where your journey may not align with their journey, and that is okay. Number one, I don't want you to ever beat yourself up and go, well, but I got to do it, or this person was there for me when I needed them. I love that for you. Tell them thank you. But if you're holding out hope that all of a sudden you're going to find that spark again, or they're going to listen to what your needs are, and it's been demonstrated that that's not the case, then you got to ask yourself, what is the fantasy that I'm falling in love with? Because it's a fantasy. And then again, it's not them. You want to really evaluate what's going on within yourself and accept this. And I will say this multiple times through this podcast. It doesn't matter how you feel. Reality is reality. End of story. It doesn't matter how you feel. That's just that. That's it. Now there is a dopamine response. Let's talk about the dopamine response. We talk about that a lot. Talk about it, why we go shopping, why we always want the next best thing. Matter of fact, I just talked about it the other day in the happiness podcast. how, you're elevating up here and this is going to make me happy. And then boom, I get this dopamine and life is great. And then you're like, oh God, now what? Okay, so there is a certain factor here. It is an anticipation of a positive outcome. So think of this. Have you ever known, not pretended to know, like something that I'm going to go see this concert tonight. Okay, whatever it is. I'm going to go do this and it's coming. You're so excited. You got that happiness going on. You're like, yes, this is pleasure. I love this so much. That's your dopamine. And again, as mentioned in the happiness podcast, that's good. We love that. But most of your dopamine is always going to have a bottom out. People don't just live in high dopamine. That's the opposite thing that you ever want to happen. However, it does operate on a pleasure of hope, and it encourages us to keep going to pursue our goals. Again, this is great. To pursue your goals and go, all right, I'm going to keep going. This is a positive outcome. I am working towards this. Your dopamine's like, hey girl, yeah, I got it. Here's the issue. Again, yin and the yang. The attachment to this feeling is going to be problematic for you because it's this feeling that you're chasing. In some levels, it's like a dopamine addiction. So you're constantly looking for this person or this situation to be different or change it. And it doesn't matter how unrealistic it is. It does not matter how unrealistic it is. The brain is wired to seek that hope for that dopamine. But this is where you got to get real honest with yourself. And now that's an issue. People want to feel better. They want to grow. They want to not feel stressed. They're ready to accept things until they're not. Right? Anybody can start. Anybody can be, woo, it's exciting until you're faced with some harsh realities. And the harsh reality is things are not going to be as you want them to be more than they are. So look at it, because if you're focused on the hope and please change, and I want this person to do this, you're missing out on a whole different side of yourself. And one thing to be aware of, though, is it does bring up your pain points. So if you're like, man, I feel like I'm in attachment, and we know that that's from trauma. Like, I don't think anybody here is new to that. However, what are you going to do about it now? So your dopamine is like, you're wired for it. So you have to say, where can this benefit me and where is it not benefiting me? And that's going to be trial and error for you. Now, one of my favorite things ever is to talk about, an ego and all those things, like ego trap, is cognitive dissonance. I told you to go back to that podcast and reference it should you need to. And that is something that people struggle in this world around the globe. I have clients in every continent, almost every continent. It doesn't matter where you are. There is a cognitive dissonance that happens for most human beings. So number one, nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. But there is a gap between reality and what we want. There is a gap. This is the reality of it. And this is what I want. And there is this struggle. Think of it as two people on tug of war. I might be dating myself. I'm not sure people even play tug of war these days. But two people on each side of a rope. And you're kind of pulling, you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's basically what's happening. Now, if you've ever, again, dating myself a bit, if you've ever played tug of war, you're going, and then you can just let go of the rope and people go falling backwards. At some point, you can let go of this, but you're going to have to work through this. So reality is going to offer you often different than what it is you want. So when your brain experiences discomfort, so think of a conflict for a second, avoiding of the conflict. And you know that you're going to have a conversation. You know it's going to be in your best interest to go have this conversation with whomever it is. And you, in your mind, says, I don't want stress. I don't want the pushback. I don't want this. Okay, that's great. You have zero idea how this is going to play out. None. So let's say the reality to this is you gear up the energy, you bring this up, and the person yells and screams at you. I don't understand, and this, that, and the third. So because it's uncomfortable for you, your reality now goes, okay, so the reality is it is uncomfortable, but your brain goes, I don't like this discomfort. I don't like this. So the reality and the actions is a little bit different. I'm just going back into the cognitive dissonance, not so much about this topic. It's where you're also living a certain way and it's not in alignment with what you want. So dissonance can also happen that way, where this is what I want, but my actions are not like working. That's dissonance. Oh, I'm going to start saving $1 a day. And you're like, yeah. But then you're never doing anything to promote that. That's also dissonance. So cognitive dissonance, instead of focusing and facing reality, because reality is, I'm going to have this conversation and it's going to be a difficult conversation. And maybe they are going to yell at me. First of all, I have a whole different thing to handle that. You don't have to deal with it. But your dissonance is saying to yourself, I don't want this discomfort at all. I don't like it. Most people, I would guarantee you, don't like to be uncomfortable. But if you're avoiding that, that goes into avoidant attachment. That's going to keep you on a loop. But then you're going to start justifying and denying the truth. Now you're going to justify it. Well, I mean, I guess that they were just a little upset because they did say they didn't get much sleep last night. Well, you know what? It's fine. Like, they didn't say anything super personal to me. It's fine. This is that keeping the peace thing. So your brain goes, I don't like this. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to deny the truth. I'm going to deny any truth that comes about. So let's say you were going to keep it light. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. This year, not so grand, but I'm still a fan. And you're not. You're like, I love the Eagles. Okay. I'm keeping it high level. This goes way deeper, but okay. And you are really upset. Like the person who's like, we've all been Eagle fans all of our life. This is how it is. What is wrong with you? You might think that this is an exaggeration. People make big things out of everything that does not align with them. And yes, this is not within my life and not even with those teams, but this does happen. This is it. Why are you can't not be an Eagles fan. What is wrong with you? And again, you'd think it's just football. Nope. These are people who want it their way. So you're like, what in the hell? Now you don't want it, but because you don't like that discomfort, you start minimizing your goals and your desires. Well, I mean, I do like the Dallas Cowboys, but I mean, that's true. The Eagles have a better record this year and it's nice to hang out with my uncle when they play. So now you're negotiating. You got to stop negotiating. You're sitting in a place of giving constant excuses. Well, but it's my mom. Yeah, but she was a single mom. Okay. Yeah. This minimization for you is not going to serve your best and highest good. Just because somebody's having a bad day, just because somebody is still working on their own emotional regulation, that does not give someone a free pass to do whatever the hell they feel like doing. So when your brain has discomfort, when there is a gap between what you want and what the reality is, you don't know how to respond to it. So you start minimizing it. You start creating storylines in your head. Well, you know what? I bet you that they would love this if I did blank. So now you start creating, if you hear him meowing, that is Ezra. And he always loves to be here. He was sleeping, but here we are. So you'll hear meowing and that is him. But that's the biggest thing is you have to realize that when your brain doesn't like the discomfort, it's going to refuse the reality. Well, you know what? My mom, I just want a relationship with her. Okay, how's that been for you for the last 48 years? You think all of a sudden she's just going to wake up and be like, ta-da! No. I don't care. This is going to sound harsh, but it's true. I don't care what you want. When it comes to a relationship, say with mom, this example, it is what it is, and you can either deal with it or not. And if you're struggling with it, you can book a session with me or a session with somebody because you have to get to the place of the acceptance that that relationship is just not going to be. And it does not matter if you accept it or you don't accept it. The reality is the reality, and it is what it is. You're allowed to have your feelings. You're allowed to have your feelings, but the problem comes when you live in that feeling state versus the reality state, because then you start negotiating and everything that comes in between that. And you definitely cannot do that because you will keep yourself in a stuck place forever, ever. There is a psychological bias. Okay, we talked about this too, the psychological projection. So go back to the psychological projection podcast, and this is going to help you tremendously here. This is where you have a bias. You have seen this, and I know you have experienced this. This is why things and TV shows and socials and everything exist. It's not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with you when it comes to this, but it's something to just be aware of. And that's your confirmation bias. So you are going to focus on things that confirm a bias. If it's a bad relationship, you're going to say, but if they do this, then this, right? So you're going to confirm a bias in order to not accept it. So you're going to focus on these things. So if it's a bad, let me give you an example. So let's say it's a bad relationship. It's just toxic. You feel checked out. You're not happy. You haven't been fulfilled. Any of those things. So think about a relationship. It doesn't have to be a love relationship. It could be a friendship. Any relationship that you see. So you're like, oh my God, this is not a great relationship. I don't like this at all. But then you go back and you focus on a positive moment. Like there could be like tiny, and I'll tell you, I have this issue with a lot. I mean, my clients have this issue when they come to me. I want the relationship to be like it was in the beginning. Okay, well, we cannot go back in time. Whether you like it, hate it, whatever, it's the reality. And they'll go, well, I mean, it started off so good. Like it started off so good. Like they were nice to me and they brought me my favorite coffee and, you know, they heard me. Okay, valid. But what about the 92% of the rest of that relationship? So instead of going, you know what, this really isn't serving me and it's time for me to get out of this, because you are holding on to this so much of what you want. I want this relationship to be what it is. So I'm going to what I was saying to you earlier about the dopamine response. I am going to negotiate my ass off as to why I should stay. And the next one's going to come up to a sunk cost fallacy, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It is so important because you're going to look, well, I guess we can talk about that now. So they're going to go hand in hand. So sunk cost fallacy is where you go, but I've put so much time into this. I've put so much effort into this. We were together for 29 years. I put all this time in there. Yeah. And okay, that's true. But in your mind, you're negotiating it. You are negotiating to yourself to say, I have put this time in. I remember what it was like in the beginning, so I know they have the capacity to do this. And all they have to do is blank. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hold out hope that one day they're going to see it. Here is the reality. It is now the way it is. Just because you go to couples counseling does not mean that they're going to finally see the light. I mean, they could, but it rarely does that happen. You're holding on to this and you're saying, I put this time in. This is how I want it to be. You know, the time spent makes it hard for you in your mind to walk away. So you're like, I can't let this all go to waste. Because there's a little bit of avoidance of like, well, damn, hell, I've been with this person for 20 years. Yeah, it's not all bad. We know this. But you got to say, is this worth it right now? I don't care how you want it to be. How is it? Look at anything in your life right now. Okay, let's do an exercise. Look at anything right now in your life. It doesn't have to be big. It could be small. It could be anything. That the reality is opposite of how you want it to be. I mean, within reality, like I'd love to not pay taxes. I'm talking about in a personal, space. What is it? Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's something at the job. Maybe it doesn't matter. What is it in your life that it is factual? On paper, if somebody was standing beside you, they could see the same facts. And then you're going, well, God, we've been into this for a long time, or I've been at this job for 27 years, or you know what, it wasn't all bad. Okay, keep telling yourself that this is enough to stay. Keep telling yourself that and see how well that works out for you. And you've probably already done it. So this is where feel versus real comes into play. And always remember, and I'm going to go back to it, it doesn't matter how you feel. The reality is what it is. Reality doesn't really work on emotion. Okay. I love the sunshine. Let's say you're like, I love the sunshine. Somebody's like, I don't really love the sunshine. I don't think the sunshine should exist. First of all, we wouldn't be a planet. But do you think the sun is going to be like, oh, damn, Martha in Montana really doesn't like that I'm out right now. I need to go in. No. Remember, the facts in life, they don't change and they're non-emotional. So you can say, this is what I believe. Okay. Well, that's your fact. That is your reality. But that doesn't mean, here's where you know it's not a fact for everyone. You're so hell-bent on how you do it or what you think or maybe from a religious or a political perspective. This is important to you. This is your reality. That does not have to be theirs. And that's the reality of that. Now, if it's a truth like we need water to survive. And somebody goes, well, I don't like water. Well, it doesn't matter. The water does not care. There's not an emotional component. You can negotiate your way out of it, but that's a fact. So just remember, facts and reality are a little different, and reality and feelings are for sure different. So you're looking at this and you're going, I put this time in. I want it to be different. If you don't accept it, and then you're going to say, how do I accept it? I'm telling you how you accept it. There's no magic pill that's going to just flip your emotions on and off. That is an unrealistic expectation. It does not exist no matter how bad you want it. If I had that tool or anybody else on this planet had that tool, we'd probably be multi-quadrillionaires 10 times over because it doesn't exist. And that's where your lack of patience is hurting you every single time. I'm going good. I'm good. Oh, this sucks. Like, why? What? It's not working. Of course, because you're looking for it to be something that it isn't. Now, there's a fear of loss and attachment. Of course, this is a standard. This is a common one in which we can all, I don't think you need me to tell you about it, but I'm gonna. You're attached to the dreams and the identity attached to the person. I talk to this a lot. I talk about this a lot in grief with my clients about grief. That's right. You don't miss your dad. I mean, you do miss your dad, but you miss the idea of what your father, I'm saying if they passed, of what your father meant to you. Okay. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, because sometimes you're holding on to the idea that they're going to finally see your value, even though they've crossed. And now what are you going to do? Well, closure happens the moment it happens. Stop seeking closure because you're just chasing something that doesn't exist. So you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, but my dad and we had such a good relationship. And when I was struggling, that's the only person that I could go to. That is what you're missing. Yes, the person, but it's the idea of said person. And that could be anything. Growing up, well, and again, and I've talked about this before, and I'm older, I'm middle-aged. We grew up with different kinds of princesses, right? We didn't just have these big, strong princesses. We had, please kiss me, and you're going to wake me up from eating an apple, and please put this glass slipper on my foot to let me know that you love me and I'm going to be the princess. Okay. This is what was put in our head often. So when you get in a relationship, you're looking like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm going to have this person. They're going to draw their sword. They're going to protect me. For one thing, that's a problem anyway. When you're getting married to the idea of someone, this is how you end up in really bad relationships. Because again, you're going back to the negotiation. Okay, well, they're not all bad. So, and nobody is. But okay, I can do this and then I'm going to invest this. And if they like green M&Ms, but there's none in my state, what if I drive over the county lines and I get this and they're going to see my value? The reality is the reality versus the desire. Okay. You see this all the time where you're like, see me, love me. I want this big goal and dream. So now you're dating somebody. Now you're married to somebody or whatever. And that idea of that dream of the forever, please stop saying forever. No one can guarantee you that they will be there forever. And there's no such thing as the one. That's a good thing. You don't want there to be the one. Are you kidding me? That's a weird thing that you're chasing forever and ever. No one can guarantee you that they won't cheat. No one can guarantee you that they're going to be there forever. No one can give you that. So if you're seeking that, that's going to be where you're on a hamster wheel on a regular basis. And that's just literally a fact. So when you start looking at the struggle of acceptance, remember you're falling in love with the idea of that person. Again, go back to the mom thing. Wow, I see my friends, or, I just even take socials off for a minute. I just want to have this relationship where I can sit and talk to my mom about my relationship, and this is what I want and I desire, and this is how moms are supposed to be. So now we have an the idea, I'm not going to say it, an idea of what it is that we want in that relationship. This is what happens, and this is where the problem lies. So a lot of the can't let go is the idea of the situation you want it to be. I want this job, and then this is what it's going to be like, and I can stay at this job forever, and I'm going to have all of this money, or I'm going to have this, and then I'm going to have stability, and then that's it. Okay, and then that job goes for whatever reason. You're like, oh, but I love that job, and that was going to be where I was going to stay, and it gave me the flexibility, and you don't miss the job, you miss what the job gave you. This is real important. And I did a podcast a while ago on detachment, living in detachment, which is a beautiful thing. When you can separate the idea of what it is you wanted to the person or the situation, it's going to be easier for you to accept, okay, as hurtful as it is, this situation is not happening with this person. That's great that you want this, but we also need to temper those expectations as well. It really is. And then that's where you have to say to yourself, do I have a little bit of my ego kicking in? Is there a level of unhealed trauma? Do I feel that everybody should do what it is that I do? And then you build that onto this idea of what you want it to be. But the reality is it just might not be. It just might not be. And that alone can be hard for you to stomach. But it's a fact. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's still a fact. Well, what do you mean? Like no one can, I just want to know that no one's going to be able to cheat on me. Listen to what these words that I'm telling you. No one can give you that. No one can give you that. And even if they say the words, what does that mean? Now, that being said, I'm not saying everybody walking around just going to go cheating on everybody. And people, well, how can I trust? You have options here. You got to be able to trust yourself. I'm telling you right now that no one on this planet can guarantee you that they're not going to cheat. Oh, they can say, I would never cheat. I would never do this. That's fine. That's good. And maybe that's great. Not everybody walking around cheating on everybody. And that's a beautiful thing. But my point is no one can guarantee you that. And if somebody is, they're in their own bias of like, this is what I don't believe in. This is what I'm not going to do. Okay. So we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But at the end of the day, the facts are no one can guarantee you that because it's going to come with actions. And it could be anything. No one can guarantee you a damn thing. But I can guarantee you this. Your happiness and your joy and your acceptance of reality gives you a whole different superpower. Whole different superpower. And that means you might have to be alone for a while. You might have to be. Because here goes back to the feel versus real. But I just want them to see. I'm like, can't they just see that this would also be good for them? You're going off of a feeling. You're going off of a feeling. The reality is their journey is not yours to control. Their direction is not for you to determine. Their feelings are not yours to worry and take on, and vice versa. So it's one thing to hear it on your end because you're like, oh my God, is a people pleaser? This is a nightmare. And sometimes it's a bitter pill for you to swallow that the facts of the matter are this. No human being can make you happy. That's a fact. That is a fact. And if you're holding out for human beings to make you happy, that goes into attachment. Now, I'm not saying that you can't find joy with the person. Hell, I'm married to my husband for 17 years, together for 19. It's great. But the fact is, he can't make me happy. And I can't make him happy. We have to do that alone. And then we can appreciate each other for what it is. There is no scenario where someone has to fix you. There is no scenario where someone has to make up for your past. Because people can't make up for your past. The acknowledgement in which you seek, I just need this acknowledgement. This is how I feel. I'm guaranteeing this. This is the reality. That apology, that acceptance will not repair what it is that you think it does. Because it's never going to be good enough. Constantly going to move that goalpost. The reality is you don't have to have a relationship with those people. The feeling is, I want them to take ownership of this because I can then be validated. You already know what you went through. The reality is you know, and you and I can grow up in the exact same house, the exact same way. And I can think I had like, oh my God, we had the most traumatic childhood on the planet. And you might be like, what the hell? No, we didn't. The childhood was great. So you're not right. And I'm not right for you. And you're not right for me. I'm right for me. My reality is my reality. The problem comes is where your ego kicks in and says, my reality is solely mine. You don't have to handle theirs. Okay? Here's where you can prevent taking on their stuff, but you got to be willing to let this go. Their perspective is not yours, and it does not have to be. They do not have to validate what your experience is. You know what your experience is. You know what it is. They don't have to confirm that. Now, you do not have to take on theirs because they're going to try to push that. Well, don't you understand? And can't you see? Remember, people see through their lens. So their perspective is already skewed. So their version of reality does not have to be yours. So your feeling can't be like, I want to win. Let them win the day. Win at life. Let them win the day. This is not your journey. Communicate that. Here's a good way to say that. Oh, well, we actually remember that very differently. My experience was different. That's it. That's it. And if somebody keeps pushing like, but don't you remember? And hey, you know what? I'm not going to have this conversation with you. I appreciate that that's your experience. Mine is different. And that's how you handle it, but you got to be willing to handle it. You got to be honest about it. And guess what? And this is the reality of it. You got to know when to walk away. That is the feel versus real. There is a time where it may be you needing to accept it and walk away from a friendship, from a relationship, from a family, from a job. That is where your issues lie. Your issues lie in the fact that you are falling in love with an idea of how you want it to be. The sunk cost fallacy of saying, I put all this time and everything into it. You've also probably given this level of oh my gosh, this is how I want it to be. So then you're doing all of these things to try to make it happen. Guess what that's called? Manipulation. That's called manipulation. So when you're trying to position it to get this person to like you, to do this, to give you the reality in which you seek, that is manipulation. It's nothing else. And that's the reality that you have to face. Until you do that, your feeling is always going to distract you from the reality. And until you accept the reality, maybe it's a dead-end job now. Maybe this relationship is no longer for you. Maybe that's where it is. And the reality is no matter how much you want it and how much you feel you want it different, it's not going to change. So I have a question for you right now. And we're going to talk more about it over on Patreon with the worksheet. But I have a question for you. What are you gaining by refusing to accept this? In your mind, in your body, what are you gaining by responding out of feelings? Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be short-lived, if anything. And until you accept that reality, you are going to stay stuck. You're going to stay unfulfilled. You're going to be disappointed and vice versa. And never, ever let anybody put that on you because you are not responsible for them. And that is the reality. Doesn't matter how you feel. It's harsh in approach, but it is factual. And that's also factual in science. That's in science too. That's neuroscience, not just opinion-based. It's how your brain works. And it's up to you to rewire that part of your brain by doing these things, handling these issues of other people by being direct. Why are you worried about keeping somebody in your life that is not benefiting you? And those are questions to ask yourself right now. Check it out.